going to be looking at a brief overview of the main part of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, Chapter 8, which is the discussion between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy. Does anyone remember what I was saying about this chapter? I said it several times in the chapter Sloki classes. Does anybody remember? Yes, that Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj says that this chapter represents our Gaudiya Siddhanta. Now, again, the chapter is too long and complex to use in hermeneutics. You can't use it for understanding Shastra the way you can use Dasamula Tattva because it's too big, it's too complicated. But still we can get an idea, I mean, it is just one chapter, of what is our Gaudiya Siddhanta. Again, I'm not going to go over everything in the chapter, it would be way too much time. I'm going to be concentrating on the first discussion that the Lord has with Ramananda Roy, which is on what is the supreme goal of life, what is the sadhya. So of course we know that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu meets Ramananda Roy by the river when Ramananda Roy is surrounded by brahmanas. And Ramananda Roy, this was the degradation of the varnashram system into some sort of caste by birth. So Ramananda Roy was considered a Shudra. Was he a Shudra?
Definitely not.
Definitely not. Okay, what was he doing? What was his work? He was a ruler. And he had the mentality of a ruler, so what varna was he actually in? He was in the field of government, he was a kshatriya. So why was he branded a Shudra? Because of some birth thing. I mean, it was actually just completely ridiculous. This sort of conception. And Lord Chaitanya, having been born in a Brahmana family, so they had this thing that the Brahmanas weren't supposed to touch the Shudras. I mean, in some parts of India, if a Shudra's shadow touched a Brahmana, the Shudra had to do some sort of atonement. I mean, it really degraded into something very demoniac and absurd. So when Mahaprabhu, why did Lord Chaitanya go to see Ramananda Roy, by the way? Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya recommended that he do so. So of course this is the way of devotional service. We get recommended by another devotee. Right? Some devotee recommends you to the Lord. Yes, my dear Lord, you should see this devotee. So the Lord says, okay. Of course, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had his own internal plan that Ramananda Roy actually became one of his very intimate devotees. So in some parts of Chaitanya Charitamrita he's identified as Lalita, generally he's identified as Vishaka. And after meeting Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu here, he actually retired very early, so he was still a young man. Still had his wife and children and so forth, but he retired from his work and he moved to Jagannath Puri and he still got his salary. Usually when you get a pension, it's a reduction of your salary. You don't get your full salary. So he still got his full salary and could live in Jagannath Puri. So after meeting Lord Chaitanya, he went there. But when Lord Chaitanya saw him, they embraced, and the brahmanas there were scandalized. How is this sannyasi embracing this low-class man? And the Lord started showing signs of ecstasy, and the brahmanas were even more scandalized. So he kind of internalized his feelings, and he said, let's meet later privately, not in front of these other people who can't appreciate. So this is important instruction by behavior of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that we don't reveal our intimate spiritual life publicly. Even, you could say, well, Mahaprabhu sort of did in Jagannath Puri, but not really. Like when the devotees came from Bengal, he wouldn't so much show all of his ecstasies. He would become more restrained. I mean, to some extent, he's dancing at the Rath Yatra and tears are coming out like a syringe. but not like when he was just with his intimate devotees. And when he was out as in his main preaching time, again, he did not. So at the end of his manifest pastimes, and usually like at night, when a lot of other people weren't around, and Prabhupada often talks about the fact that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't discuss very high esoteric things publicly. Yes, it's, I mean, of course, Srila Prabhupada did publish Krishna book, which we distributed to the public, and Nectar of Devotion, Nectar of Instruction, and Chaitanya Charitamrita, which we distributed to the public. And Prabhupada said we don't boycott the gopis. He said we can have articles about the gopis in Back to Godhead, and he would talk about such things in his classes. However, Srila Prabhupada didn't go into very detailed esoteric things publicly, which has become somewhat of a fashion among certain circles now in our Hare Krishna movement, and going into detailed esoteric things. All right, so when they met alone, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his main question was, give me a sloka, sadhyata. Sadhya means the goal. What is the goal? So just this morning I was hearing Prabhupada say that you have to have a goal. You have to know where you're going. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, what's the goal of life? What's the ultimate goal of life? And Ramananda Roy said, do dharma. The ultimate goal of life is to do your dharma. Whatever your dharma is in the world, do that. And by doing that, you'll attain Vishnu Bhakti. Now this is, of course, the philosophy of so many religions in the world. Be a good person in this world. I remember years ago talking to this one man, and he said, well, I have my own religion. I'm not so interested in Krishna consciousness, I have my own religion. And I said, okay, what is it? And then sometime later he said, I just want to be a good person. Of course, that begs the question of what is good. So in the scriptures of the world, especially the Vedic scriptures, they prescribe what is good, and they prescribe what is good according to one's stage of life, which we call ashram, and according to one's temperament, which we call varna. And if you do that, if you just follow what's good according to your temperament and your stage of life, you will attain Vishnu Bhakti. And he quotes this verse, which is actually quite an important verse. We should also note that for every single thing that Ramananda Roy brings up to Lord Chaitanya, he always quotes Shastra. He always quotes Shastra. This is important. Sometimes we hear even members of our Hare Krishna movement, even sometimes senior members, say something, and when you ask them, what's your pramana? Pramana means what's your source of authority? They don't have any. So people should be able to give a pramana. One time I remember I was asked actually by my GBC to attend classes of one sannyasi who was not in ISKCON, but he was attracting many ISKCON devotees in the area to go to his classes. And he was telling all these intimate pastimes of Radha Krishna that he was mixing up with criticism of ISKCON. It was quite an interesting experience. I considered it like sweet rice mixed with sand. It was like this really unfavorable mixing of things. Anyway, I asked him several times. I just stayed there because I was told to go there. I wouldn't even have gone, but I was told you should go there and find out what's going on. So several times during the time I was there, I asked, oh, Maharaj, this is a wonderful pastime. Where is it from? Can you give me the source? And he just wouldn't respond to me. And then another day, the GBC deputed another devotee to, I didn't want to go a second time, he deputed another devotee to attend, and he was the same thing. What's your source? What's your source? What's your source? Finally, at the end, he says, well, I walk around Vrindavan and I ask the villagers for stories. So that's dangerous.
Yeah, but that's exactly what Prabhupada apparently told. If you want to know more, you ask local people.
You ask the people in Vraj. Okay, but you can't take, I mean, Srila Rupa Goswami does have some allowance for things like that, but then at least you should tell people. You should say, this story I heard from some villager in Vrindavan. I mean, it was once I was giving class on a purport where Prabhupada was talking about the fact that the Gopal deity had been moved out of Jagannath Puri and that there had been some friendly quarrel between Lord Jagannath and Gopal. And so I did quite a bit of research to figure out what in the world that was, because Prabhupada didn't say what it was. And all I could get was village stories. You know, that the Gopal deity was eating all the sweets and the savories and leaving Lord Jagannath with just the rice and the sabjis. And so Lord Jagannath told to Gopal, go get your own temple. And so he left. So I repeated that, but I told everybody this is a village story. You know, this is just the common story in Jagannath Puri about what happened. And we don't have some solid pramana about it. I mean, we have Srila Prabhupada saying that there was some kind of loving quarrel between these different incarnations. But at least let people know. I mean, I was at a program, I think a year ago, and one devotee who I respect very highly was telling some pastimes, and one of the pastimes really intrigued me. I thought, oh, I've never heard this before, and it's really wonderful. I'd like to meditate more on this pastime. And so I asked him, where is this from? And at first he responded defensively, like, who are you to ask me the source of my stuff? And so I said, no, I'm not challenging you. I would just like to learn more about this pastime. And he said, well, I heard it from so-and-so. I'll see him again in like 6 months, and I'll ask him, what is the source? Please remind me. So I reminded him, nothing. I reminded him again, nothing. So we should be very careful that we actually have some firm source. And even if it's a source from the Vedic literature, a lot of the different Puranas and stuff have not been passed down purely. I mean, we know the Bhagavatam is passed down purely because there's 81 commentaries on the Srimad Bhagavatam, and the commentaries quote the verses in the same way. Now, sometimes there's some variation in the verses, and we find that Srila Prabhupada and often our acharyas will note that. Yes, you've noticed that in the purport. Prabhupada will say some versions of this verse have this word instead of this word. Or Prabhupada will sometimes say, in some versions there's 2 extra verses, or these verses are not included. Then they'll make a note like that. But in many of the Puranas, many of the Itihasas, there's no commentaries at all. And so we really don't even know if we're getting the same verses. So we should be very careful. So here he's quoting the Vishnu Purana, 389. This is a very, very well-known verse. Brahmashrama charavata purushena parapuman Vishnu arajate panta nanyat tat toshakaranam. And the translation of this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, is worshipped by the proper execution of prescribed duties in the system of Varna and Ashram. There is no other way to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One must be situated in the institution of the 4 Varnas and Ashrams. This is actually quite a very strong verse, that one must do one's duties according to Varna and Ashram in order to satisfy the Lord. Now, Lord Chaitanya's response to this is Eho Bhaya. He doesn't say it's wrong. He's not saying, well, this verse is wrong. But he's saying it's external. So why is it external? What does he mean by external?
It's not essential.
No.
It's not what?
Essential?
No. Although that's a very good guess that it's not essential, yeah?
Devotional service is like part of the spiritual energy, and this is external to the spiritual energy.
Excellent. So devotional service is on the platform of spiritual energy, and this is not the spiritual energy. Of course, we had Bhagavatamrita when Uddhava and Narada are advising Gopakumar. And Uddhava says to Narada, you should advise him because you're a Brahmana and I'm a Kshatriya. And Narada says, that doesn't have any meaning here in the spiritual world. And Uddhava says, well, the Lord likes to play as if it does. The Lord here is appearing in Dwarka as a Kshatriya and in Vrindavan as a Vaishya. And so the Lord has this kind of play even here. Of course, then Narada convinces Uddhava. Narada does give instruction. He also convinces Uddhava to give some instruction. But so there's something in the spiritual world that resembles this sort of social structure, although it's not for, physical maintenance or keeping out enemies, or there's no wars in Vaikuntha. You don't need soldiers. But yes, this is external. That if that's all you're doing, if you're only doing your Varna and Ashram duties for the Lord, you may be identifying like that. You might say, I am a Vaishya, I am a Vanaprastha, I am a this, I am a that, and I'm worshiping the Lord as that, which is what most religions do. They say, I am a man, I am a woman, I am a banker, I am a farmer, I am a whatever. And I'm doing that to worship the Lord. So he's saying that's external. Okay, and then Ramananda Roy says, all right, well, offering everything to Krishna. So you're not just doing your duty to please the Lord, but you're taking the results of your duty and you're offering to Krishna. And he quotes this verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Yat karoshi yat ahasi, yat adnasi yat jahosi dasi, yat tapasyashi kante yat tat karushvam adarpanam. By the way, any of you who do any interfaith preaching, there's an almost identical verse like this in the Bible in Corinthians. So whenever I'm preaching to Christians, I like to quote this verse and quote the verse from Corinthians. And so Lord Chaitanya again says this is external. So this is external for exactly the same reason. It's a greater depth of connection with Krishna, but it's still on the platform of a false identity. It says that can't. Remember, Lord Chaitanya is looking for the supreme goal of life. He's not asking, what should you do? He's saying, what's the highest thing to do? So the highest thing to do is not to offer the results of your work to the Lord in terms of your material identity. So then Ramananda Roy says, well, give up your duties in this world. Just don't do them. Don't do your ashram duties. Don't do your varna duties. Don't do anything according to your material identity. And he quotes a nice verse. He says, occupational duties are prescribed in the religious scripture. You can see their faults and good qualities, so just completely give them up and serve the Lord. And it's interesting that in support of that, he quotes this verse, Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vrajaham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma sujaham. But of course, when Krishna says this verse to Arjuna, is he asking them to stop being a kshatriya or stop being a grihastha? No, he isn't. In fact, it was Arjuna who wanted to go in that direction. Arjuna says, let me just give up all my duties in this world. And at one point, of course, Krishna in the 6th chapter says, okay, fine. Go to a sacred place, sit on deerskin, stare at your nose, say Om, be a brahmachari. Just, forget everything. And it's Arjuna who ends up rejecting that. Arjuna ends up saying, Chanchala himana Krishna, I'm not going to be able to do that. And he says, he asks indirectly. He says, what happens if someone does this and fails? He's obviously thinking about himself. And after that, Arjuna doesn't bring it up anymore. So it's Arjuna who's pushing for this, not Krishna. Krishna is pushing in another direction. And yet Krishna says this verse. So this verse cannot possibly mean that you stop doing your duties in the world. Because that's not the context in which this verse is spoken. But of course, there are devotees who do that. And then they become avadutas. Avadutas means that they have nothing to do with any of the conventions of the world. In fact, Arjuna did do that at the very end of his life. So Yudhisthira, and then he was followed by his brothers and by Draupadi and Subhadra. And they went north. They stopped speaking to anyone. They stopped interacting with anyone. They were just traveling as avadutas. And Lord Rishabdev did this at the end of his life. Of course, Jada Bharata, Jada means like a stone, he did that not entirely his whole life, but pretty much in that third life. He's like, I'm not going to risk anything. Because in his first life, he was the king. And then he came to a point where he retired, he became a vanaprastha, he's out in the forest. Good morning. And out in the forest, he sees an orphan baby deer. And his Kshatriya mood kicks in, and he's like, I'm the protector. He got into that, he revived that mentality. He supposedly had left his Varna behind to become a Vanaprastha, but he revived that mentality. And he got so into protecting this deer. And for him in that time of life, it was actually a dharma. And then it deviated him from everything. And then he had to become a deer. And the next life, he's like, I'm not going to risk any of this. So I'm not going to identify with anything. And I'm not going to do any duties in this world. And he would do things backwards. You know, he would bathe before he passed stool. You know, he would just frustrated his father. And he acted like he was blind and deaf and dumb and intellectually challenged. You know, he acted like he just couldn't function in the world. We had one child in our movement like that she behaved as if she was not neurotypical, extreme. And she ended up leaving her body in Vrindavan, I think because she drank some cleaning fluid or something. And Prabhupada said she was never of this world. So, you know, sometimes a person does that. Of course, even Jad Bharat, when he met King Rahugana, then he acted more like an ordinary person in terms that he had a whole conversation with him and a whole preaching with him. It was kind of interesting. Before that, he acted as if he was deaf, dumb, and blind, which he wasn't. And when he met King Rahugana, then he actually had a conversation with him. But so we do find sometimes devotees do that. Of course, we are not advised to do that. It would not please Srila Prabhupada if any of us behave like that. We do have, in the time of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, there was Vamsi Das Babaji, who he wasn't full on Avaduta, but pretty close. Pretty close. I mean, the one devotee who attended him, he said, in 4 months I haven't seen him eat, use the toilet, or bathe. So, don't try that at home. But we have, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said to the other devotees, he is actually a great devotee, although his behavior was very unconventional. You know, he would yell at his deities. And anyway. So Lord Chaitanya says this is also external. I'm just going to not do anything in the world. So I'm going to do my duties in the world, or I'm just not going to do my duties in the world. Yes.
Do you mind question now?
Yes, sure.
But what does this actually instruction of Krishna to Arjuna mean? Does it mean this is your ultimate goal, and in the meantime you just do it internally?
Oh, very nice point. So is Krishna's instruction mean this is your ultimate goal, and right now you do it internally? We'll kind of get there in a minute. But the idea is to give up the identification. So it's not that I'm fighting on the battlefield because I am a Kshatriya, because I am a Grahastha Kshatriya, and I'm fighting for righteousness, and that's why I'm doing it, and that is my dharma. To give up that identification. Yes, I have that externally, and therefore that's what I should do for Krishna, but I am a soul. You know, I've been talking about in the Career Dharma classes about giving up being above the shades of ego, being above the gunas. And Krishna says in the I've had devotees argue with me on this point, which blows my mind, as one of my granddaughters would say. Sorry, I hang around with young people a lot. She'll say, it's a mind blow. That why any devotee should say that we should be in the gunas, or that we should use the gunas in service. I just can't fathom. I mean, we might be in the gunas, that's something else, but not that we should be in the gunas. Does that all follow?
Yeah.
We might say, I'm really being affected by tamagun right now, but that's not a good thing. Well, in order to do my service, I have to be in tamagun. Like, what? You know, or I've heard many devotees say this about Rajagun. You know, I'm not going to be determined unless I'm in Rajagun. I'm not going to have any enthusiasm unless I'm in Rajagun. It's like, I'm sorry, what? I mean, if you have to be in the gunas, be in Sattvagun. But even that's not recommended. And this is right. Even, it's in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So, you know, Bhagavad Gita is the ABC, and the second chapter, and Krishna says, Nistrigunya Bhavarjuna. Get above the modes of nature. So we have dharmas according to what modes we're in, and it's not that I'm doing this dharma because I'm moded out, as my friend Urmila likes to say.
Is a transcendental passion that exists.
There's transcendental passion. Yes, exactly. There's even transcendental ignorance. You know, one of the Vyavichari bhavs is laziness. Did you know that? So my friend Rukmini and I, we have this joke that we're going to start the Lazy Baba Society. But all we're going to do is start it. We're not going to do anything in it. So one example given, because then you're lazy. So it's a joke. It's a joke, folks. It's a joke. So in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami gives an example of this laziness at the Govardhana Puja, where Krishna's telling everyone to circumambulate the hill, and there's some brahmanas who are saying they're just too lazy. They say we'll just sit here and collect alms. But that's an ecstasy. It's a Vyavichari bhav. It's an ecstasy of pure devotees. They're not in tamagun. So if you look at the Vyavichari bhavs and even the secondary sthai bhavs, you're going to see things there that look like tamagun or look like rajagun or look like sattvagun, because the gunas come from something in the spiritual world. Yes? But we shouldn't be, again, as my friend likes to say, moded out. So give up your dharma that, don't do things for that reason. Have that not be your motive. Okay. So Lord Chaitanya said that was external. And then Ramananda Rai said, Jnana Mishra Bhakti is the goal of life. In other words, to do bhakti with the view of liberation. To do bhakti for the purpose of liberation, which is exemplified here by Prithu and the four Kumaras. And he quotes Brahmabhuta Prasanatma Nasochachina Kanchati Samasarveshu Bhuteshu Madbhaktim Labhate Param, as talking about Brahmabhuta. Now, this is a very significant verse where Krishna is saying that after you're liberated, you can do bhakti. And Srila Prabhupada often says this, that in order to do real deep bhakti, you have to already be liberated. Of course, this concept confuses Arjuna earlier in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 12th chapter, where he says, do I first have to realize Brahman or myself, according to various acharyas, how that's explained. Do I first realize Brahman? Do I first realize myself? Do I first realize myself and Brahman? And then I can do bhakti. And Krishna says, you can do it that way, but klesho dikatarastesham, it will be very difficult for you to do it that way. And Krishna explains that you can do sadhana bhakti, which will also liberate you. It's not that I'm going to do gyan, or I'm going to do yoga, or I'm going to do karma to get liberated, and then after I'm liberated, I'm going to do bhakti. But rather, by doing bhakti, I will become liberated, and then I can do mature bhakti. Something like you practice a drama, you're practicing, and then you perform. So when does the drama start? Does it start when the playwright has an idea for a script? Does it start when the playwright writes the script? Does it start when you cast the people in the different roles? Does it start when you're practicing, or does it start when the curtain opens in front of an audience? When does it start? When does bhakti start exactly? So if we're going to talk about pure bhakti, that's like the curtains have opened. If we're talking about practice bhakti, we're talking about the practices, literally, quite literally so. But that can also be part of bhakti. But Lord Chaitanya says this is also external. Why? Because wanting liberation is external to the soul. The real essence of the soul is wanting a relationship. So now Ramananda Roy says, okay, jnana sunya bhakti, bhakti without a desire for liberation. We have here the flying brahmacharis. Yeah. Can be the name of a new kirtan group. The flying brahmacharis. Now, this is very important. This is the first time that Lord Chaitanya is going to say, this is okay. He's not thrilled about it, but it's okay. This is now in the okay category. And the verse that Ramananda Roy quotes is very important, and it really relates directly to your question about Sarvadharma and Parityajya, and it relates very much to what we're going to talk about on Thursday, which is the relationship between our Dharma in this world and the month of Kartik. So this is, Ramananda Roy quotes 10:14:3. So if he's quoting 10:14, who's speaking? It's right on the screen. Lord Brahma. Yes. And what pastime is this? Brahma Vivahan Lila. Yes, exactly. So Lord Brahma is talking to Krishna, and he says, those who, even while remaining situated in their established social positions, this is the stani stita. Those who, even while remaining situated in their established social positions, in other words, you're doing your varna and ashram work, throw away the process of speculative knowledge, which is how Prabhupada always, or almost always, translates jnana or jnana yoga. And with their body, mind, and words, that's why I have this picture of body, mind, and words. Right? Do you see my little symbolic body, mind, and words here? Everybody get this? This is body, mind, and words. I always have fun trying to put these slides together. So those who, even while remaining situated in their established social positions, throw away the process of speculative knowledge, and with their body, mind, and word offer all respects to descriptions of your personality and activities, dedicating their lives to these narrations, which are vibrated by you personally and by your pure devotees, certainly conquer your lordship, although you are otherwise unconquerable by anyone within the three worlds. So here Lord Brahma is saying, do your duty in this world according to Varna and Ashram, but at the same time, be absorbed in Krishna's Leela, be absorbed in narrations of Krishna as spoken by Krishna and as spoken by Krishna devotees, which is how Prabhupada always defines Krishna Katha, right? Krishna Katha is that spoken by Krishna or that spoken about Krishna. So, and to give up desires for liberation. Now Lord Chaitanya says that's it. That's okay. Now this is the demarcation. So now we come to what is actually the goal of life. Do your duty in this world while you're meditating on Krishna. And now Ramananda Roy is going to go higher, because Lord Chaitanya says, that's all right, but can you tell me something more? And he says, yeah, you should look for prema. You should actually look for pure love, not just absorption in Krishna, but absorption in Krishna with pure love. And then he quotes this nice verse, as long as there is hunger and thirst, varieties of food make you happy. Do you ever try to eat when you're not hungry? It's not pleasurable. Right? It's actually painful. Yeah? Similarly, when the Lord is worshipped with pure love, then all the activities of bhakti awaken bliss. So when we do our activities with love, then those activities make us happy. Maybe you could wake him up too on your way out. Is this a very boring class?
No.
2 sleepers here. So when we actually do our devotional service with love, with attachment to Krishna, then it brings us happiness. If we're saying, I'm doing this service, it isn't bringing me any happiness, that means you're trying to eat food when you're not hungry. You notice how food tastes better when you're hungry? Everybody's noticed that? Yes? If you're really, 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 really hungry, then even if it's sort of, it's just a chapati, it's like, whoa, this is such a good chapati. And so when we have actual love for Krishna, then our activities in devotion will fill us with bliss. And he quotes from the Panjavali of Sri Rupa Goswami, when the Lord is worshipped with pure love, the various activities performed in the course of that worship awaken transcendental bliss in the heart of the devotee. That can be attained by paying one price. What is the price? Eagerness, greed. And Lord Chaitanya says, that's all right. We haven't gone above that's all right. It's just all right. We're at Prema Bhakti, and it's just all right. So then Ramananda Roy says, Dasya Prema, the love of the servant. In this picture you see Raktak and Patrak, the 2 chief servants of Krishna in Vrindavan. And here's another drawing of Raktak and Patrak serving Krishna. And Ramananda Roy quotes from 9.5.16, what remains to be attained by those who have become Krishna servants? If you become Krishna servants, nothing more than this. And Lord Chaitanya still just says, that's all right. We're still at the that's all right category. So we had the that's external category, to serve Krishna while maintaining your material identity, or to serve Krishna while you want to give up your material identity, but you're not focused on a spiritual identity. Clear? I'm going to keep my material identity but serve Krishna. That's external. Okay, I'm going to not have any identity. I'm just going to be into liberation and serve Krishna. That's external. I'm going to give everything up. Okay, I'm going to mix them. I'm going to mix liberation with bhakti. No, that's all external. Okay, I'm going to do my duties in the world, but without identification with them and be focused on Krishna. Yes, that's all right. I'm going to do my duties in the world without identifying with them to serve Krishna in prema. That's all right. I'm going to identify as an eternal servant of Krishna. That's all right.
Can we go back for a moment to this madness after Krishna running, this. Does it mean that devotee who has such eagerness to serve Krishna that he or she will be automatically so enthused regardless of what type of occupation is being performed?
That's the idea.
Uh-huh.
I mean, unless you're, a mafia boss or you're running a liquor store or something.
Yeah.
I mean, that might even be the case, like Prabhupada talks about prostitutes in Dwarka who are pure devotees. But at least for us, those 4 things, meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex, gambling, we shouldn't do any, also like murder, which isn't in that list. In other words, we shouldn't be doing some occupation that's involving sinful activities and think I'm going to do some sinful occupation but meditate on Krishna. That we should not do. Other than that, yes.
I didn't mean the range of occupations. I meant how particular occupation is relevant to our conditioning.
Oh, but that's part of Krishna's instructions. So, can you meditate on Krishna even if you're in the wrong place doing the wrong thing? Yes, but it will be very difficult. You're going to put up we've been discussing this with Career Dharma. You're going to put up all kinds of obstacles in your spiritual path. And you're not going to really be able to use your occupation in service. It won't work. If you're a heart muscle, you can't serve the body if you're hanging out in the stomach. There's no service a heart muscle can do for the body in the stomach. You'll just cause a disturbance. So if you're doing something that's not in accord with what Prabhupada calls psychophysical nature, you can't really use that in service. It won't really work. You'll end up causing a disturbance, and it will impede your bhakti. I mean, you can still meditate on Krishna and chant Hare Krishna. I mean, that's always there. Okay, he said that's all right. Now we're on, Ramananda Roy says, okay, Sakya Prema. And here we have Subal and Sri. Here we have Krishna with his friend. Quotes from 10, 12, 11. Certain exalted personalities, after accumulating volumes of pious activities, are now playing with the Lord in friendship as cowherd boys. Oh, very good. Now we're in the very good category. Eko Uttama. Yes, that's very good. But can you do more? And then he says, Vatsalya Prema. Seeing the Lord as your child. That's the ultimate goal of life. Again, Sarva Sadhya Sada. Sarva means all, Sadhya means goals, Sada means supreme. Of all possible goals, this is the supreme goal. And Ramananda Roy quotes from 10, 9, 20. Here we have a picture of Nanda, Yasoda, and Rohini with Krishna and Balarama. The favor Mother Yasoda obtained from Sri Krishna, the bestower of liberation, was never obtained even by Lord Brahma or Lord Shiva, nor even by the goddess of fortune, who always remains on the chest of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Lord Chaitanya says to Ramananda Roy, this is also very good. Can you give me anything else? And then he says, Kanta Prema, the prema of being a lover of Krishna. And he quotes, you're noticing for each of these he's quoting something, right? He's giving a pramana for each of these from Shastra. For here he quotes 10:32:2. Suddenly, due to their feelings of separation, Lord Krishna appeared among the gopis, dressed in yellow garments and wearing a flower garland. His lotus face was smiling, and he was directly attracting the mind of Cupid. This is Krishna's return to Ras Lila, and after which he sat with each of the gopis. This is the painting of that. It says that each gopi thought Krishna was only there. Now this we mentioned the other day. Actually, Ramananda Roy says this twice in this chapter, and it's also emphasized by Sri Rupa Goswami and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. We talked about this, day before yesterday. It is true that whatever relationship a particular devotee has with the Lord is the best for that devotee. Still, when we study all the different methods from a neutral position, we can understand there are higher and lower degrees of love. So we can say, okay, Madhurya Prema is a higher degree of love than Dasya Prema, but that's not true for a particular individual. So for a particular individual, their relationship with Krishna is the highest for them. You cannot say they should be, and this is true, no one's going to say, well, Hanuman is not at the highest position. That would be blasphemy, actually. You follow? Yeah? That would be highly offensive to say, well, Hanuman's a lower devotee. I mean, we talk about like how Prahlad Maharaj is the best devotee. Lord Shiva is the best devotee. We have lots of best devotees. And here we see several different rasas. We see the gopis, the cowherd boys, and the Mother Yasoda and Nanda Maharaj. We see those in Shantaras, right? The birds and the trees and the buildings. This is an illustration from a pastime from Ananda Vrindavan Champu, a holy festival. And so here, and this is Madhya 886, he says, as the qualities increase, so the taste also increases in each and every mellow. Therefore, the qualities found in Shantaras, Dasyaras, Sakyaras, and Vatsalya Ras are all manifested in conjugal love. Please understand, he's talking about the qualities, not the activities. The qualities, not the activities. Because you do have improper mixing of rasa. Just like even in this world, you would never want to mix parental ras with romantic ras. And Srila Rupa Goswami says if there's even the slightest hint of conjugal ras in parental ras, everything's completely spoiled. Yeah, we understand this materially as well, that concept. Yes. So we're not saying that it's all, but we're saying the qualities of that, if you can understand that distinction. Okay, and he quotes, this is in Lord Ramachandra accepting Vibhishan, that Lord Krishna has made a firm promise for all time if one renders service unto him, Krishna correspondingly gives him an equal amount of success in devotional service to the Lord. So this is not talking just about amount, but about kind. However you want to worship the Lord responds appropriately. This is with the idea that whatever is best for you is what's best for you. So then Lord Chaitanya said, okay, you've reached the limit of perfection. There's nothing higher than this, but can you tell me something more anyway? Do you have anything more you can tell me? And then Ramananda Roy starts talking about the love of Srimati Radharani and glorifying that as the topmost love. And then Lord Chaitanya says to Ramananda Roy that the reason that I can't come here has now become an object of truth. But I think there's something more you have to tell me than this. Please describe the features of Krishna and the features of Srimati Radharani. So Ramananda Roy establishes first that Krishna is God, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then he has this verse about Krishna being the ever-fresh Cupid. This is verse 138. A very astonishing verse and purport, which I quote a lot in my presentation about sexual desire and dealing with sexual desire, that Krishna is the ever-fresh Cupid. And Prabhupada says some really amazing things there, which he also talks about in teachings of Lord Chaitanya, which we don't have time to discuss today. And then again, second time, Ramananda Roy says, every devotee has their own relationship with Krishna, and that relationship is the best for them. So he makes this point twice. This point is very important if we're going to look at, where does our relationship with Krishna come from? We have this, I was explaining the other day, that there's an internal, according to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, there's an internal and external path of spontaneous devotion that Swarup Damodar taught, the external path to Vikeshwara Pandit and the internal path to Raghunath Das Goswami. And on the external path, your guru discusses with you when you're qualified, okay, this is your eternal form that you can meditate on. But if you look at that in Jaiva Dharma, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about how that's a discussion with the guru. That the guru may say, try meditating on this as your eternal form, and the disciple may come back and say, well, that's not working for me. I need to go in a different direction. And this practice became perverted into anyone who had no qualification, wasn't following any sadhana, wasn't even following the four regulative principles, just going to some guru who's not qualified, and the guru says, yes, you're a gopi. And by the way, they're all gopis under this system, every one of them. That in and of itself should make you suspicious. And so these people say, if everybody's becoming a gopi, right? And they're all becoming Manjari gopis too. And they're all becoming Manjari gopis in Lalita's group. And so then they come, because they say that's the highest. They've come up with what's the highest. Well, the highest is to be a gopi, and they've decided their assessment. Higher than a Saki is a Manjari, and the highest group is Lalita's group. So if you're a Manjari in Lalita's group, then you're the highest. So that's what everybody's going to get. It's like a factory, Everybody, it's all interchangeable parts because it's factory made. And then they say, well, how is it that that's for everybody? How's everybody doing that? And they say, well, that's because you don't have an inherent personality. You're just a blob, I guess. I don't know what you mean. And the guru gives it to you. And, at the time that this started to become prevalent was around the time of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And so he started preaching against this. We don't find much preaching against this before the time of Bhaktivinoda Thakur because nobody was preaching in favor of it before that time. It didn't come up. It didn't arise. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is preaching against this. Yes, the guru helps awaken your relationship, but it's your relationship. It's who you are. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati completely, or almost completely, rejected the external path because of all of this cheating. And then they criticized Bhaktisiddhanta, well, you're not doing any spontaneous devotion, because he rejected this cheating business, which Srila Prabhupada also rejected. And we have these statements from Krishnadas Kaviraj, quoting Ramananda Roy, that each of us has a relationship that's best for us. It's our relationship. It's our relationship. And it must be our relationship eternally, without beginning. If it has a beginning, by definition, it is illusion. Right? Krishna gives that verse, what's eternal, what's real, has no beginning. What's unreal, it doesn't stay, it's temporary. Something that's temporary is, by Krishna's definition, unreal. And Krishna says anything not related to him is unreal. So if I say I have a personality, but it's not related to Krishna yet, then my personality is unreal, then I'm not a person. And if you push these people, then they'll say, well, we have the ability to become a person. But that's against the whole Vedic idea that we don't become something. We already are what we are. And it's even the impersonalists say we are spiritual, and it's a question of just uncovering our real nature. So we each have our own relationship with Krishna. We've always had that relationship with Krishna without beginning, although it is also our choice. And this, again, it's very difficult to understand how something that's beginningless is our choice, because we have a hard time thinking like that. But anyway, so Ramananda Roy says this for the second time, that each of us has our own relationship with Krishna, and our relationship with Krishna is what we want to have, what's best for us, what we desire to have. It's according to our taste, our choice, our desire. And then he starts talking about, goes back to talking about the Madhurya Bhav of Srimati Radharani, and he talks about that the highest expression of that is Mahabhav, which is represented by Srimati Radharani, and that Krishna enjoys her company both day and night. And then Mahaprabhu asks about, Ramananda Roy mentions briefly that there's also separation. And in separation, there's another level of ecstasy. And then Lord Chaitanya said, that's it. There's nothing beyond this. That the conjugal mellow experience in separation is the highest possible goal that anyone can experience. Then he says, now you told me the sadhya, you've told me the goal. Now tell me the sadhana. How do I get there? Very good order. First know where you want to go and then ask how to get there. Yes? It should be the order of inquiry. Where am I going? And then how do I get there? You can't ask how do I get there if you don't know where you want to go. Indradumna Swami tells a funny story that you know how sometimes airlines will give you a voucher, like especially if you volunteer to get off of a full flight. They'll say the flight is full, it's overbooked. Anybody who volunteers to take another flight, we'll put you on another flight and we'll give you money. But they don't usually give you just money. They give you a voucher, like a gift certificate kind of thing, that you can use for their airline. Yes, one time my family and I all got free trips to India like that. We were on a flight that was full, and we volunteered to get off. The next flight was also full. We volunteered to get off. I think it was 3 times. So then they gave us a hotel room, and then each of us got so many vouchers that it gave me some free trips within America and a free trip to India from that. So Indradumna Swami said that he got these vouchers, and so this is many, many years ago, when he was traveling extensively with a much younger Sri Prahlad. And so he said Sri Prahlad and he went to the airport with their vouchers, and they go to the airline counter to get a ticket, and they say, we'd like to buy a ticket. And the ticket agent says, where do you want to go? And Indradumna Swami says he turned to Sri Prahlad and said, where are we going today again? Because they're traveling so fast from one place to another. I say sometimes it happens to me when I wake up in the first night I sleep in a new place, and I'll wake up in the morning and I'm like, what country am I in? So, first you have to know where you're going. The ticket agent can't issue you a ticket if you don't know where you're going. So first you ask the goal, and now he's saying, what's the sadhana? How can I achieve this? And Ramananda Roy says, only the gopis can appreciate these pastimes, and unless you take shelter of them, you cannot enter into the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. And then he describes this amazing love of the gopis. What does it mean to take shelter of them? What does it mean to take their mood? He says there's an inexplicable fact about the inclination of the gopis. They never want to enjoy themselves with Krishna, but their happiness increases 10 million times when they arrange for Radha to enjoy with Krishna. And he says, although the gopis don't want to enjoy with Krishna, Radharani makes plans for them to enjoy with Krishna, and then she enjoys a happiness 10 million times greater than when she's with Krishna. So this is the opposite of envy. Envy is, I want it, and I want to have something more than you. Like, it's fine if you have a happy marriage as long as my marriage is happier. It's fine, if your kid is an honor student as long as my kid gets better grades. You can have a nice car as long as my car is nicer. I always want to have more than others. I used to manage the serve out on Janmashtami, and I told the servers, you have to make your own plate up first and put it aside. Because otherwise they would be very miserly serving out like the paneer sabji. It was a real problem because they're calculating. I want to make sure there's a little bit left for me at the end of the serve out. So I said, make your own plates, put it off to the side, and then you can serve peacefully. You know you have a plate with what you want to eat. So that's our basic mentality. Spiritually, it's the opposite. Spiritually, now we can't just falsely imitate this, okay? If you just try to falsely imitate it, you'll become resentful. You follow? You can't pretend you have a higher mentality than you have. If you pretend that, well, I just want to give everything to everybody else, it won't last. After a while, you'll start thinking, what about me? I gave everything to everybody else, and where is there something for me? And it just won't work. You'll explode. I know of a marriage that exploded after 10 years because of this, because the wife never, ever, ever argued with the husband about anything and never complained about anything. I'm just going to be a perfect wife, and I'm just going to give and give and give and give. But she wasn't actually on that platform. So every time she was giving, she was keeping score. I gave this, okay. I gave this, okay. And every time she was annoyed, she was saving the resentments. So she had this stock of entitlement and resentments. And the husband thought, my wife is just so happy. Everything's fine. And then after 10 years, some little thing, they say the straw that broke the camel's back, some little thing. And there was a volcano. There was an earthquake. And then there was no fixing anything. The poor guy, he couldn't fix 10 years of this. It was over. And she did not do well after that, by the way. He survived and did well, although he went through some stuff. But she did not do well at all, spiritually or materially after that. So we should not just pretend that we're a pure devotee when we're not. We'll fall on our face. But we should have some idea that this is the goal. That this is what we're aiming for. We're aiming for a mentality where we're so satisfied with our loving Krishna, like Krishna says to the gopis, I can't give you anything, just be satisfied with your love. That we're so filled with love of Krishna that we feel full. We don't need anything. We don't feel we need to get anything. And when we get happiness by other people having more than we're so full and overflowing, we feel like we have unlimited. It's not a contest. who has more of something. And so we're just like, yes, you also have, and you have, and you have, and you have. And I'm happy seeing you have. We have a little idea of this in this world sometimes. You know, the parents who are happy to see their children get more than they have. The parents who never finished high school, they're happy their children get a college degree. So we see this sometimes, this non-enviousness, where we're actually happy at others' happiness. And the gopis have this to an extreme degree. And when Krishna sees this, Krishna likes to hide and listen to the gopis talking about him, by the way, as you see in this picture. And when Krishna sees this attitude of the gopis, he becomes very satisfied. This is what makes Krishna happy. This non-envious competition. Again, we kind of imitate this in ISKCON. Like there'll be one floor mat, you know, there'll be so many devotees in the class, like here, it's not true today, we have lots of extra floor mats. But sometimes you have so many devotees that all the floor mats are being used, and somebody comes in the temple room, and you try to give them your floor mat, and they try to give it back to you, and you're competing as who's going to give the most, right? So we kind of have this is our social behavior in the Hare Krishna movement. You take it, no, you take it, no, you take it, no, you take it. But this is actually the deep mentality of the residents of Vrindavan, all of them, but especially the gopis. And Krishnadas Kaviraj is saying, there's not a pinch of desire for sense gratification. They only want to please Krishna. Again, don't imitate this. It won't work. It just won't work. If you say, well, I don't care, I'll only sleep 2 hours a day, and I'm just going to eat plain rice, and I'm just going to sleep on the hard floor, but you're not actually on that platform, then at a certain point, everything just like comes rushing back in. Have we seen this happen? Those of us who've been around for a long time. Yes, we have seen this happen. Mm-hmm. And we've seen this happen even to people who appear to be really, really stalwart devotees. So this is not something to be artificially imitated, but this is something to which we want to aspire. And again, we have where Ramananda Roy says, in the liberated stage, the devotee is going to be naturally attracted to one of the rasas, and then they will manifest their spiritual body. So there's many other conversations that we didn't discuss. I mean, I just touched on where Ramananda Roy describes the glories of Krishna. Ramananda Roy describes the glories of Srimati Radharani. There's whole large sections in this chapter on this, which I just really briefly touched on. And then there's another time that Lord Chaitanya meets Ramananda Roy and asks a whole bunch of other questions. He says, like, what's the supreme education? What's the greatest distress? What's the greatest fame? What's the greatest song? So he asks a whole bunch of other questions, which I'm not discussing in this presentation. So we're just going to end here. And if anyone, it is already 9 o'clock, but we could take maybe one or two. Yes?
Were Giant Vijay promoted to another ras after going to, they become...
You can't be promoted to another rasa. That doesn't make any sense.
They went to Lord Chaitanya's pastimes.
But that doesn't make any sense. If our rasa is our rasa, you can't be promoted to another rasa.
So
Now
then,
I'll tell you what can happen. So Prabhupada says some of the residents of Vaikuntha are still in process. So there are some residents of Vaikuntha that aren't in their final destination. And one of the evidences, Prabhupada doesn't give any evidence for that, but one of the evidence for that is Gopakumar, where Gopakumar, it keeps looking like he's at the final place, but he's not. And the reason we know he's not is that he doesn't stay happy there. Like he gets someplace and he's like, yes, this is it! This is it! And then he's there for a while and he's like, no, it's not it. And then he goes further and he's like, this. But when he gets to be Cowherd Boy, then that is it. Then that is it. So there can be a progression like that. The other wonderful thing is that liberated souls can expand themselves. Now, we cannot expand ourselves like Krishna in every atom, but we can expand ourselves, and liberated souls can be in more than one pastime, with more than one incarnation in different ways at the same time. So there are devotees in Mahaprabhu's Leela who are serving him in the mood of a servant as Dasya, but they're also in Lord Ramachandra's pastimes as monkeys, and they're in Krishna's pastimes as Sakya, as cowherd boys.
At the same time.
Yes, all at the same time. Yeah, wow, huh? Where do we get to go? Like, what an exciting movement we're in. And Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati says some devotees are only in Mahaprabhu's Leela, some devotees are only in Krishna's Leela, and some devotees are in both, simultaneously. So you could be in Krishna's Leela and you could be in Mahaprabhu's Leela. I mean, we know, like, say, Jambavan, he's in Ram Leela and he's also in Dwarka Leela. We have Rohini, who's in Vrindavan Leela and in Dwarka Leela. So in the spiritual world, it's not that Rohini has to go back and forth.
No.
She can always be in Vrindavan and she can always be in Dwarka. And it's not that Jambavan, has to go back and forth. Okay, now I'm going to spend some time now with Ram, now I'm going to spend some time with Krishna, but he's in both Leelas. And he's in the Leelas differently. In Dwarka, he's in the Leela as Krishna's father-in-law. In Ram Leela, he's a tribal, basically. I think he's actually a bear in Ram Leela, but in Krishna Leela, he's a tribal. It's Krishna's father-in-law. So that's also there. Our relationship with Krishna is whatever we want it to be. Our relationship with Krishna is whatever we want it to be. Our relationship with Krishna is whatever we want it to be.
And what we want is what we are.
What we want is what we are. We want to be who we are. We are who we are because we want to be who we are. And we want to be who we are because that's who we are, because that's what we want to be.
We only have to discover.
We only have to discover it. And then nurture it. Because it's been sleeping for a while. So, when someone's been in a coma for a long time, they may have to relearn how to talk. So we may have to relearn things and go through training periods. And who we are may be more than one who we are. I mean, Arjuna's with the Pandavas, and he's also Nara with Nara Narayan. That's quite different. So who we are may be more than one who we are. You might be a monkey in Ram Leela and a cowherd boy and a Brahmin man. Is that all right?
But what does this mean? That the giant Vijay become in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes? Why? Why they come in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes?
I don't know. That's above my pay grade.
Yeah.
What I've said already is, I think, as far as I can answer that.
Thank you.
All right? I don't think I can answer it beyond that. Mahalakshmi, and then we will stop.
Hare Krishna. Haribol?
Yes, it's on. It's on.
Okay. We've seen here Ramananda Rai, how Lord Chaitanya met with him.
Yes.
And yet, in other pastime with Maharaj Prataparudra, he didn't want to know anything about a king, and both were kings.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. Of course, Ramananda Roy is a much more intimate devotee. But even here, he's hesitant to have people see him with Ramananda Roy while he's his king. He comes and embraces him, and then he stops and he says, I'm not going to do that. He doesn't really associate with him intimately, regularly, publicly, until he stops being a king. And the idea then was you didn't want sannyasis to hang out with rich, powerful people. Why not?
Influence.
Because they might be influenced. So the idea was that if you're a sannyasi, this is not something we're doing now at all. Srila Prabhupada didn't do that. But in Mahaprabhu's time, the idea was the sannyasi is civilly dead, and they're not supposed to associate with the rich and the powerful people of the world. so that they wouldn't become corrupted. Prabhupada wanted to meet rich and powerful people in order to influence them. So you have a little different mood. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Ramananda Roy ki jai.